Are your players fighting through the slog? Wave after wave of endless encounters that saps their will to continue through this evening's session.
Razor sharp fangs face you as it tries to bite you because it was actually
Let me guess. Is it a mimic? Is it a mimic?
Yeah, it's a mimic.
Or are they slicing through every encounter with ease, like a hot Vorpal blade through a gelatinous cube?
Oh, I'm gonna cast Lightning Bolt with a level 6 spell slot. Here we go. 87 damage.
They're all dead.
Tonight we're gonna reveal that if you make one simple change, it can fix all of your encounter pacing issues.
Join us today as we show you how to cast the Empty Room.
A lot of the times you're going to get advice, and it's going to tell you that when you are prepping a dungeon or planning your encounters, that you never, ever want to have an empty room.
I guess as long as they're talking about that you don't want an empty room with nothing to do, then I guess they're right.
Otherwise, that could be construed in our minds as maybe terrible advice. But we're going to prove to you today with this video exactly what you can do with an empty room.
The pivoting point of your dungeon.
Empty rooms are everywhere. They're even in Wizard of the Coast's official Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition adventures. And I think that there is a purpose for having them. I don't think that they're just supposed to be empty. Think of this magical room as Schrödinger's room, where it is neither occupied or empty until your players decide to encounter it.
You can use this empty room however you like. You can prep it into your adventure before you start, or you can use it on the fly. The empty room becomes the canvas for the transition that you're about to do. One very important skill that Dungeon Masters need to develop is the ability to take themselves away from the combat and away from the dungeon, peek above the DM screen and check on your players to make sure they're paying attention and awake and excited for what you have in store. Every other channel talks about the 3 pillars. We should know them by now. Roleplay, exploration, combat. It could be that your players are fatigued from sticking around in one of the pillars for too long.
As a dungeon master, man, I have made that mistake many times where I just do not read the room. I'm not gauging the temperature. I've lost my players. The fix: use an empty room and use that empty room to switch pillars. If you're in combat, go to exploration and investigation. If you've been exploring an empty castle for 3.5 hours and you haven't found anything of interest, throw some role play in there. Use this magical empty room as a moment to be a catalyst to correct your pacing for your players. It makes everybody perk up at the table because something different is finally happening in this dreadful game. Trust me, it's happened. First thing you can do is to use the empty room as a restroom. Typically, you're going to want to drop a restroom into your dungeon when your players have been beaten down by encounters, specifically combat encounters. Maybe something that you prepped and planned for and you thought was going to be pretty challenging or balanced actually was almost deadly. Now your players are talking about leaving, they're talking about getting out of that place, they're talking about abandoning the quest. Hey, you guys see a door at the end of that corridor, and when they pop it open, they're going to see a bountiful feast on top of a banquet table. And there's going to be fruits and ale and haunches of meat, and it's all glistening and looks delicious. But the longer that they're in there, they start to know that every individual piece of food is glowing a different color, and it's going to be glowing a color of the rainbow. Not only is it going to be a restroom, but they're going to have to use their heads. You're not just going to give them free rest. You want this to be an interesting encounter. They can use their skills. They can start making arcana checks. They see this statue at the end of the room. You know, they detect magic, and it's like, oh, that statue has magic mouth cast on it. So they're starting to piece these things together, and they're like, they do enough, and you have to give them information. Otherwise, they're not going to try the food, because the food is going to help them. What you do is you make green stuff heal them, blue might restore some spell slots, but then you have some negative ones, where purple might restore spell slots, but it also grants a level of exhaustion. A little bit of that. Figure out what you want each of these different color-coded foods to do. But as they're making their skill checks and they're using their abilities to figure out what's going on in this room, give them information. Don't be coy. Don't be like, well, I don't know, maybe you gotta try it. Like, if they're using up their abilities, if they're casting detect magic, yes, this food is enchanted. Or if they make a really high arcana roll, be like, yes, you're fairly confident that if you eat the green colored foods, it is going to heal you. And, you know, the blue ones are going to restore spell slots. Give them something so that they start interacting with what you've given them. That is what's going to make the restroom work.
If you made the right call and your players are sick of combat and need a switch, they are delighted to jump into a situation like this. The restroom can also act as a specific place for your characters to spend a short rest. They walk into the room. You describe that it's an open cavern, and if they buckle down, they can rest here for an hour or so. And tell your players you can take a short rest here, but sound travels pretty far in these caverns, so you have to be very quiet. So if you wanted to take a long rest, you'd have to make sure that through the night, you guys didn't make too much sound. Reminds them they're in a dangerous dungeon still.
Correct.
The next thing you can do with the empty room is turn it into a player background connection. As we crawl deeper into the caves, an opening emerges, and everyone sees a plentiful spawning of different brightly colored mushrooms. You have players roll a perception check, and whoever rolls highest on their perception check, you give them a little bit of their background. You tell them, you recognize this species of mushroom from the Feywild, very close to your home. What does it look like, and what properties does it have? And work with the player on creating something then and there that they can collect and use. And the player responds by saying, oh yeah, that's a goobaglok. And when you eat them, it gives you dark vision. Go ahead and give your players 60 more feet of dark vision.
Yeah, the effect doesn't have to last forever. Just make it last for maybe an hour.
This can be specifically helpful if you notice one player who is not engaging.
The next thing you can do with this empty room is listen to your players. If they've been going through your encounters in your dungeon, they've been going through this castle, and they start coming up with ideas of what they think they're going to encounter, use the empty room, fulfill their dreams and their ideas. If they've been thinking that they're going to come across some sort of weird arcane laboratory based on these machines and nonsensical gizmo creatures you've been throwing at them, give them that lab. Give them that weird gnome laboratory in this empty room and let them play around in it. Maybe there can be a puzzle in there, or maybe it's just a little reward where they've been slogging, they really haven't had anything fun happen, because you don't want to have too many low encounters. Low encounters are fighting enemies, getting hurt, using abilities. You know, then you want to punch it back up with a high point. Let them find the gnome lab. Let them get some sort of reward. Maybe potions. There's an alchemy set. Or maybe they find like a gnomish flamethrower that's just got one charge left. Something stupid and crazy that they're gonna love. But at the same time, you were listening. Sure, you didn't come up with the concept of this leading to this gnome laboratory, but even you have to start realizing, you'd be like, what your players are saying, yeah, that makes sense. Give it to them. Use this empty space as a reward.
Don't forget that you can also use these things after big highs. They just killed your big bad boss and it was amazing. Bring them down off of it.
Yeah, knock them off their little happy ledge.
Chill them out. Like walk through a room, look at trinkets, pick things up, figure things out. Wait a little bit for combat to come back. Another thing you can make the empty room is a skill puzzle. A skill puzzle is a challenge that your players are going to solve with their skills instead of their combat abilities. It might be a large crevasse that they need to jump over. It may be a sliding puzzle of large stone slabs that they need to create an image out of. Think about what all your players are good at and make each piece of the puzzle something that they can do. Or if you're trying to engage one single player, make it a challenge that you know they'll thrive at and will be excited to jump back into.
To piggyback off of what Kamo is saying, you can also have combat puzzles. Now these are combats that cannot be bested by swords and sorcery or might and magic. Instead, you are up against an enemy that is basically almost unkillable.
Frick.
And you need to figure out a way to vanquish this foe using your smarts. You need to be a smart player. Maybe it's an environmental puzzle that will allow you to get past this guy, but they're going to be constantly doing damage. And that sort of creates a timer, which is going to create urgency. Maybe it's a ghost, and you have to, as it's attacking you, it's just enraged, but one of you can sort of commune with this thing because you look at the languages that your players know, and you're like, well, you can sort of you get a few words. You sort of understand like every third word that this thing is saying. Maybe this haunted spirit just wants to see the sunshine one more time because it was this heroic adventurer that died down here and it turned into this angry spirit. Now you got a party full of spellcasters that can cast illusions that look like the sun.
Or daylight.
Your cleric can cast daylight. Sometimes you don't even have the answer to it. You have a combat puzzle and you see what your players throw at it, and if they start throwing really cool ideas at that, let that be the answer.
This is like the Death Star trash compactor. Their first instinct is to shoot blasters.
Doesn't work.
If your players walk into this room and walk into the situation and they start slashing, and you see that their weapons start to crack or bounce off and fly across into the room, into the wall.
Yeah, your magic missile bounces off and hits one of your party members. That's weird.
Then they're like, oh, we got to try something else.
Always be ready to pivot. Always be thinking of interesting encounters. Always be ready to make your players do something outside of their normal capabilities. It's going to challenge them, and it's going to keep the evening flowing at a nice, smooth pace where you're not stuck in that quagmire of giggity giggity, all we're doing is comedy bat, or giggity giggity, all we're doing is explority, or giggity giggity, all we're doing is talkity. That's the end of that joke.
It went on for 3 pillars.
Giggity. Let us know how you redirect your players. Do you use the empty room? Do you have another method of keeping pacing up at your table so that you're not going too fast, you're not going too slow, you're just doing that nice motion of the ocean right in the middle?
Keeping your players engaged, excited for the next thing? Let us know.
We hope you enjoyed this video. Like us.
Don't forget to subscribe, Toll the Dead, and we'll see you next time.
Later, liches.
This video was actually inspired by the previous video we made about creating dungeons. Check it out.